So hello, Sandra. It's a pleasure to connect with you today.
Siobhan, I am so excited to be here. Thank you for this opportunity to share some of my story and my message and reach more people.
Thanks, Sandra. I've been inspired by what I've learned about you so far. So I wonder, could we start by just telling our audience where you're joining us from today, Sandra, please?
I live in Houston, Texas, in USA.
Fantastic. And can you just tell us a little bit about your current work? We'll start where we are at the moment.
Yes. Well, I like to say that my work is helping people shine when they speak to groups and meetings and presentations. And that covers several sort of streams of work that include public speaking and overcoming the fear of public speaking, as well as leadership and executive presence, voice and diction, and accent reduction, pronunciation of English, and interview preparation. But it all sort of boils down to helping people shine when they speak.
Wow, it covers quite an amount of different technical areas there, Sandra. Fascinating. So, can you tell us a little bit about, well, not just a little bit, quite a bit, if you don't mind, about your journey to this point?
Well, I think we want to talk about overcoming public speaking fear today. I think that's
Yeah, that's the
most
focus.
likely the focus. So I'll tell you the story of that journey. It probably began when I became an actor. So I actually got an undergraduate degree at the university in psychology. And when I was finished with that, I realized that I really wanted to act. So I went back to the university to work on a master's in acting and directing. And I got incredible training. I was good at acting, but I wasn't great. I did not know how to be fully present on stage. Things would happen to me when I would become the center of attention, and I would sort of disconnect from myself and become inauthentic. So acting was an act for me. And I did my move out to Hollywood, and I quickly realized that I was not going to make it as a professional actor. So I did other things, and I found myself moving to Northern California and then out to Maui in Hawaii. And while I was living on Maui, I got cast in a community theater production of the musical Camelot. I was playing the role of Morgan Le Fay, and this was 1985. And my costume for Morgan Le Fay was flimsy at best. It was basically a pair of tights and long yards of flowy, gauzy fabric that was all kind of artistically wrapped around me. And it was all held together by a belt that snapped at the waist. Well, on this one particular night of performance, in front of almost 200 people, my belt unsnapped and my costume began to slowly unwind. And now that would normally be a horrifying and potentially humiliating experience, but that's not what happened. Instead, I entered a profoundly altered state. I felt suddenly no anxiety, no fear, no self consciousness. I felt extreme calm, and time had slowed down. So it seemed like I had plenty of time to decide what to do about my costume malfunction. I just gracefully reached down and grabbed the edges of the belt and snapped it back into place. And I continued to play the scene as though nothing had happened. But something extraordinary had happened inside my inner climate. That near costume crisis had caused me to become totally present to the moment. I felt my spirit expand to fill that entire auditorium. I felt enormous and magnificent. And it, my acting transformed in that moment. I acted in a way that I had never acted before. Everything was in the moment, moment to moment. I was so totally connected to myself and the source of my talent, and I was so in present moment, so that my acting was very genuine and authentic and sublime. And even more amazing, I was at the very same time connected with my audience in some kind of spiritual way. It's like I was holding their attention magnetically, and they were feeding me energy, some kind of attention. I remember feeling like I was bathed in love. And this extraordinary moment of feeling at one with the audience lasted the rest of that performance and the rest of the night. And then the next morning when I woke up, it was gone. And I didn't know how to get back into that state. So I wanted to. I wanted to know what had happened to me and how I could get back there on purpose. It set me on a journey. It took 3 or 4 years. And in that time, it seems like everything that I needed to know came to me. I learned that this state had a name. It was called the flow state, that scientists were actually studying it, that athletes were training for it, that all kinds of performing artists experienced it. And it seemed like ideas for how to get into that state just sort of appeared in my mind. And I learned a meditation. Someone out of the blue taught me a meditation that helped get into the moment. It's called grounding. And so 4 years later, it's like I woke up one day and I realized I knew how to get there, and I thought that I knew how to teach it. So I began teaching it. By this time, I was living back in Houston and teaching acting to adults, beginning adult acting students. So I started to experiment with them, and it made an incredible transformation in their ability to be present in front of the class, to perform in the moment, to be authentic. And so after about a year's time of doing this, I realized, oh, there's another market. People who have to speak in public, business professionals for meetings and presentations. And so this whole thing began to transform into a method to help people develop a style of speaking that's very present and authentic and comfortable and confident, being the center of attention, so that, as I said, they can shine when they speak. And that, Siobhan, was 30 years ago, a little over 30 years ago. And since then, I've facilitated hundreds of groups of what I now call the Sandra Zimmer method. And that's the story.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I heard part of that story before, and I have to say, I was listening to it when I was out for a walk on a podcast, and it literally stopped me in my tracks when I
No.
heard you mention that story about what happened to you, where you were acting and you became present and in the moment. And I think the reason it connected with me so abruptly, so quickly, is because I haven't had probably as an intense an experience. And I've still since learned, thanks to some of the information that you've sent to me, that this can happen on a spectrum. But
Yeah.
I have had a similar experience when speaking in public. So I do speak in public quite a bit, but certainly in the earlier years, I was very conscious of trying to remember my lines,
Yeah.
very much in my head, thinking about linking what will I say next. And I'd
Mhm.
have different techniques of how I was going to do that. But I do recall on one occasion, and I can remember it in vivid detail because it was intense for me at the time, forgetting my lines. And
Yeah.
I actually almost knew I was going to forget them,
Yeah.
but I forgot them. And at the time, I have to say, it was almost like an out of body experience.
Mhm.
Something descended on
Yeah.
me. And just you mentioned the word calm. It was a calmness and definitely an intense feeling of being at one with the audience.
Yes.
Suddenly I realized they weren't going to kill me or they weren't going to hurt me. And I just felt so connected with them. It was an amazing experience.
Mhm.
And I know how real and special and profound that was. Plus, I definitely had a heightened sense of my own capability in that
Yeah.
moment because
Yeah.
what I needed to say, what I needed to do came to me.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, completely. So much of what you said, it makes so much sense in terms of the flow state. For me, this thing that you said about where something descended onto you, that that is the sense of shifting out of your head and into your body and becoming really grounded in your physical body
Mm.
at the center of attention. So it feels like something's descending on you, but it's actually your consciousness shifting down into your body so that you're very full body aware. And when you have this full body awareness, you become in the moment. Your attention, your awareness pulls from out there into here so that now you are so fully connected with yourself. You can think what you think, you can feel what you feel, you have full access to all of yourself. It's a delicious experience.
This is amazing. I'm so grateful that I've come across this concept again at the moment because I'm just thinking in terms of public speaking, but also in terms of teaching and
Yeah,
education. I don't know if you're aware, but certainly in Ireland at the moment, there is a much greater emphasis on mindfulness in the classroom and some meditation. And especially, I suppose, given the time we're living in with COVID-19,
yeah.
we're beginning to become more aware of children's
Wow.
emotional well-being. And would you believe it, just in the last few years, we've begun to do a lot of grounding exercises and activities in our classroom.
Wow. You are so far ahead of the United States. You know, in the US, there is an emphasis on mindfulness. Everybody talks about it, but to my knowledge, it's not being taught in the schools. Now, I don't have children, so I could be wrong about this, but I am not aware of it being a regular curriculum in the schools. And what is mindfulness, but being aware of everything that's happening in the moment,
Mm.
which, you know, your five senses. And to me, the magic of getting in touch with your five senses is it also brings in awareness of your spirit, your soul.
Yeah.
When you are connected all the way into your physical body and in this moment, it's like consciousness expands. You have higher consciousness that comes in, and then there's a wholeness that people experience, which is incredibly empowering. You begin to know who you are and what you're capable of.
And I imagine, Sandra, there's more of a possibility then of fulfilling your potential
Exactly.
for yourself.
Exactly.
And I would say I have had a few kind of flow experiences as well in the classroom. And this is where I think this might be applicable to teachers, is because I can honestly say I've taught lessons for days on end without being present.
Yeah.
And then when I have had the experience of, for whatever reason, becoming present, those lessons are just out of this world. they
Yeah.
they really connect with the students more because the students are my audience
Yeah. They are.
at those times. So yeah,
And
this
they respond to that. They've got to respond to that.
mm. And I think it gives you the power, like you mentioned there about being more connected to your audience. It really gives the teacher the power then to be more aware of what's going on for individual students or
Yes.
what they might be struggling with, what they might be catching easily. It definitely seems like a very powerful state to be in.
Oh, this is fantastic, Siobhan. So, in my experience of being in flow at the center of attention, what happens is that the connection with all the people in the audience becomes really heightened. So, you can see what's going on with people. You begin to be able to read them, not because you're trying to read them or trying to control them, but because in that state, you see so much. You see the field.
Mm, mm,
And so you're able to tune into who's paying attention, who's in some kind of stress,
mm.
who's reacting negatively, even. And that's okay too. The amazing thing to me is that it allows you to accept the audience as they are,
Mm.
see what's going on with them. And then I would imagine then if you're teaching children, that you can then use that information to help them um,
For
in
sure.
whatever way you see as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's probably an opportunity there to explore this a lot more,
It sounds like it.
research it, I think, in with regard to school. But just going back, Sandra, now, I suppose specifically to the fear of public speaking. You probably know, I'm sure, that it's well reported that it is the number one fear amongst adults worldwide, and some people say that it's second only to death. And Jerry Seinfeld famously said that most people would prefer to be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy. So you probably heard that.
I have.
Do you think that the fear of public speaking is really as pervasive as reported? And what is your take on this fear of public speaking?
I do think it is. The statistic that I have read is that 74% of the adult working population experience some degree of stage fright, public speaking fear, public speaking anxiety. If that's true, then it's a fairly normal thing. More of us experience it than don't. The problem, I think, is that we haven't normalized it. We need to normalize public speaking fear and use it as a springboard for being authentic. Because in my research, in my 30 plus years of working with this, I've discovered that the key to unlocking stage fright is authenticity. If a speaker, a presenter, a teacher can be authentic enough to say, "Ooh, I feel nervous. I want to do a good job for you," it unlocks the contraction that's happening in the body and it frees that energy to flow. So, my work has really largely been about freeing people to be comfortable being who they are in front of groups, in front of audiences, whether that's, an audience like a boss or a team or a large presentation, you know, wherever there's an audience of listeners, the more that we can learn to be who we are and be comfortable being who we are, the freer we are to access our brilliance, access what is unique and valuable, what our gift is to give to the world. Did that answer your question?
Oh, absolutely. That's so powerful, though, because in my experience, people I would have met and myself over the years, I would have always thought that my fear of public speaking and their fear of public speaking would come from that fear of being yourself,
Yeah,
really, and a lot of self-doubt around, well, who would want to listen to me anyway? What
yeah,
do I have to say that's of value?
yeah.
So what you say there is very clear and is very powerful, that the key to unlocking it is authenticity, to be
Mhm.
yourself. And that sounds simple, but I'm sure it's not.
No, it's probably not. Although I think I've created a set of steps that makes it feel pretty comfortable, pretty easy, and pretty simple. There was something I wanted to back up and say. You know, I think that most people think that fear of public speaking is about speaking. They're afraid of speaking, but I don't think that's the real issue. I think the real issue is not being comfortable to be who you are at the center of attention. That's it. Not, not feeling safe to be who you are when you are the center of attention of other human beings. That, I believe, is the real issue. And if we can get people comfortable being who they are, they automatically become good speakers because most people know what they have to say. Most people who have something to say know what it is. You know, if that's a subject matter expert, a, a teacher in an area, whoever.
That's so it's so interesting, because and it's so true. I love what you've just said there, because I'm thinking again, even in the classroom context, I know that all of my students have plenty to say and
Yeah,
have no problem speaking.
yes,
But then when you begin to shine a light on them,
yes.
or put them or entice them, encourage them into the center of attention, there's some that will still thrive, but there's many that won't.
They just lock up. They freeze up.
Exactly, exactly. So, Sandra, you mentioned there that you've come up with a strategy
Mhm.
to deal with that, to support that, and I presume, are you talking about the Sandra Zimmer method?
I am. That's what I call it now. Someone who is a marketing person suggested that I give it my name and a method. It's been called many things over the years, including speaking from the heart,
I love that.
um, which which is really what it's about. The Sandra Zimmer method is my strategy to guide people through a set of steps or modules that little by little gets them comfortable being who they are in front of groups, and then making real connection and thinking on their feet and telling stories and then crafting messages. um, would it be helpful if I kind of took you through those steps?
Oh, definitely. I'd love to hear about them. I've heard about them before, and I know that this is a world famous method, and certainly I'm sure it'd be very helpful for other people involved in public speaking, but also I really think it would have a lot of value too for teachers or anybody who's trying to support their students
Mhm.
with that fear of public speaking. So I'd be very grateful if you would share the steps with us.
Yes, you're convincing me today
Twisting
that
your
this
arm.
is something that needs to be offered specifically to teachers. I honestly had not thought about that.
Mm.
So the first step in my method is what I call put energy down, which is grounding. And I teach a specific sort of mind body exercise or meditation that puts attention through the whole body and allows you to drop into your physical body at the center of attention And that's important because it changes your psychology. You stop worrying about what they're thinking about you, and you start to feel really comfortable in yourself so you can focus on, well, what am I thinking and what am I feeling and what do I want to say? So the first step is putting energy down, which has to do with grounding. The second step is turning attention in, focusing attention into what's happening when you become the center of attention, what gets stirred up, what thoughts, feelings, sensations, tensions get triggered inside when all of these people are looking at you. And instead of covering that up or pretending it's not there, we take a dive down into it and I ask people to express it, which is the third step, really, is to learn to say, oh, my heart's pounding, or my knees are shaking, or I feel a little choked, or my chest is tight, or my head is just running all of these thoughts, like, what are they thinking about me? Whatever gets stirred up, we pay attention to, and then we express it. And expression is important. The word express means to press out. When you express it, you release the contraction out of the body, and the energy that's being held starts to go into flow. You start to feel flow inside. So all of that has to happen inside, and then the external, of course, verbalization. The next step is to do what I call receive the flow of attention from people in the group. I teach people how to use a soft eye contact to land their attention on one person at a time, and not to reach out to them, but to simply take their attention in as support. And it's kind of magical what happens. People start to create this sense of we are here together instead of I'm up here alone talking at you, which now the person at that fourth step starts to feel really comfortable in their skin at the center of attention. They're starting to feel some of that flow and they're in connection. And so the last step is to say what you want to talk about. And that could be as simple as what I want to say is, or I'd like to talk about. But then I also have a set of other steps that teach people to tell a story, create an impact statement, and then add the ideas and the insights that they want to share so that they craft a message. And that is the Sandra Zimmer method. It connects people to themselves, to the sense of their authentic self at the center of attention, and frees them so that they can speak, and then gives them a sort of a structure to speak from. And I've learned that when people have a little structure, speech will flow.
Yeah.
A lot of flow happens.
Yeah. So that makes so much sense, Sandra. And as you were speaking there, I've been aware in my own speaking journey, in my own teaching journey, people would often say to me about, being in the moment, uh, just trying to be comfortable with the audience. I would have been told explicitly the audience are not there to get you, they're there to support you. But I do think there is a huge difference between being told these things,
Right,
knowing them on a cognitive level, and
right,
just being able to put them into action. And
right.
in order to put them into action, and we teachers absolutely love 3-step programs,
Processes.
5-step programs. Just tell us, what can I do next? And then what do I do? And next.
Baby steps.
Mm,
Because this is such a potentially traumatic thing, this fear of public speaking, it just made sense to me that if I could break it down into baby steps and get people one little step at a time, that I would end up with speakers who would really shine. And that is truly what has happened. I would say the first 10 years I was doing it, I was proving my intuitive sense, because this was very intuitive. There was no training for this. But the first 10 years, I would say I was proving, okay, this actually works. And then the second 10 years, I was figuring out how to write about it, how to put it in a book, and to really codify it as a simple system, because I had to keep stripping away stuff that was too complex or too heady or too psychological, had too much theory, and make it really practical so people were just experiencing it. And then this last 10 years has been, just my attempt to share it more and more with the world.
Wow, it's fantastic. I've heard you also say, Sandra, in another interview, how you think that people who initially have the greatest fear of public speaking can sometimes become the best speakers.
Yes,
I'd love if you could just explore that a little bit more for
yes, yes. I, I I often start by telling people, if you have a lot of public speaking fear and anxiety, you have the potential to become a star at speaking. And that's because people with a lot of stage fright tension have a lot of feeling. When you think about it, there's a lot of feeling, emotion, energy stirred up in the body. It's right up to the surface. You can't ignore it. And if you can learn to tap into that, then you can actually use that energy to speak from flow. And that's really what I've not attempted. That's what I've done is learned how to teach people to tap into that energy. And it goes back to being willing to be authentic, which goes against traditional public speaking methods. At least in the US, traditional public speaking methods are still very much you give a talk and you get up there, and I, as the public speaking teacher, will tell you what's wrong with it so that you can get better.
yeah, yeah.
And that didn't work for me. It didn't work for me as an actor,
Mm.
and it didn't work for me as a speaker. I sort of have lost the thread. What you were asking me about the fact that people who have the fear of public speaking have the potential to be stars.
Exactly, exactly.
It's because public speaking anxiety is not something that's wrong with you. It's something that's really right with you, which is you are highly sensitive. You have a lot of emotion, a lot of sensitivity, a lot of passion, and it's up to the surface, which means there's so much potential for you to really speak from passion.
That's so powerful, Sandra. I imagine that there'd be people listening to this podcast who are very touched by that. It's almost bringing a tear to my own eye because I know the level of fear I've felt myself over the years. And for somebody to say that that's not something that's wrong with you, but something that's right, that's just so powerful and touching.
Yeah.
And also, I think one thing that connected me to you very much when I was reading your book, I haven't completed yet, but I've read quite a bit of it, was I was very taken aback to read that you yourself were very shy as a
Ex-
child.
Extraordinarily shy. I was really terrified of people and terrified to be the center of attention. That's so weird about my journey. Public speaking was the last thing I ever thought that I could do, much less teach it to people,
Yeah.
because I was so afraid to be the center of attention. Even when I knew the answer, like I was one of those children that you can see in your classrooms that they know the answer, but they can't say it because they can't risk being the center of attention. They can't risk making a mistake. And despite all that, I was really attracted to acting. And maybe, I don't really know what that was,
Yeah.
but I was so attracted to acting by the time I was a junior in high school. And even though I was terrified, I loved it.
Yeah. I was a very shy child myself, and I would say I'm still a shy adult. And I've spoken to teachers who would often say, I really do want to do more public speaking with my students, but I am concerned about the student who's very shy, who's
Yes.
reluctant to speak. How can I approach that? And I'm thinking that that's where your method again could have at least be support for
Mhm.
teachers interested in that. But I think an important thing to note, um, just in terms of what you have now given the world with your Sandra Zimmer method and everything else that you offer, um, imagine if you had never taken the opportunity to speak,
Yeah.
what would have been lost?
What would have been lost? I think about that a lot.
Hmm.
I, it's it, it's a driver for me to keep going.
Yeah,
Not only because I really know how to do this, but because so many people in the world are talented, gifted, intelligent, smart. They have solutions, but they don't feel safe and comfortable to speak up about it, to share it. And that means the world loses some of that, some of those solutions, some of that gift.
yeah, yeah. And I often think as well, knowing that I am a shy person, there is that part of me that also wants to scream out. But just because I'm shy doesn't mean I don't have something to say. I have something to say. I have lots of ideas. I probably spend longer than some people thinking about those ideas because I'm not talking.
Yeah,
And therefore, I suspect that there are many, many, many shy people out there who haven't yet had a chance to develop their voice,
yeah,
perhaps, or be heard, that could, as you
yeah.
say, come up with some of those groundbreaking solutions to our problems that we so desperately need.
One of the questions that you sent me that I would love to respond to is, are there people in the world who are really talented, who are big stars in the world, who have public speaking and stage fright, anxiety? And there are. In the United States, some of our initial statesmen were terrified of public speaking. Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, he was really scared of public speaking. He had his little notes in his stovepipe hat when he did the Gettysburg Address. But there have also been um, singers like Adele, Beyonce, Barbara Streisand, whom I think was one of the century's most exquisite pop singers ever to live on the planet. She did not sing live for 30 years. She only sang in a recording studio because she had so much stage fright. I mean, these are big stars. Harrison Ford, um, Laurence Olivier
Whoa.
had tremendous stage fright. And I actually have a list of them because there are so many people we know now, like Lady Gaga, Mark Twain, Luciano Pavarotti, Warren Buffett. You mentioned to me earlier Joel Osteen.
Yeah.
He's from my hometown. Mahatma Gandhi
Wow.
was very uncomfortable speaking to groups. So I think my message is that you don't have to allow this fear to hold you back, that
Mm.
you have the potential to be a star. If you've got a lot of it, you probably have a lot to say. You probably have a lot of talent that you could be, sharing with the world.
I think this will offer a lot of hope and inspiration to a lot of listeners, um, Sandra, definitely. I don't know if you're aware, but I've created a program myself, public speaking program for children from age 5 to 18. And about 5 years ago, when I was doing a bit of research for it, I started to Google and look for videos online of children public speaking.
Mhm.
And at that time, the only ones, the main ones, and really, I suppose, almost the only ones I came across were of children in America. There were very few videos of children anywhere else speaking
Mm.
in public. And that made me think about, as something I've grown up with myself, I definitely have had a perception that people from America are a lot more confident than myself anyway, and perhaps some other Irish people. But I don't know, is that because we see so many movies, or well, certainly even in my own experience, I've met a lot of wonderful American people over the years, but they certainly don't seem to have a fear of speaking and seem very eloquent, have used very few ums and ahs and crutch words. That's been my experience. Maybe I've met different people to you.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that that's true.
Yeah.
It is possible that there is something about the American culture that is sort of rough and ready and, cowboyish and, you know, get up and go. And in comparison to, say, Asian cultures,
Yeah.
um, I know the British culture is more reserved, and I think that they do not teach anything other than recitation. Um,
Right.
recitation?
Recitation. Like,
Recitation. Um, so I don't, but to my knowledge, public speaking is not something that is taught to children in the US. I think so often that it should be. I, I don't know how to use my system to do that.
mm,
I think because my system requires internal awareness and expression of emotional intensity, I don't know if it's right for young children,
mm,
but teens, I would think yes, and definitely college students.
mm,
There may be, it may be that what needs to happen is that someone like you or, other people in the world need to learn my method and then take it forward, take it, adapt it in some way.
yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Because I was very interested, Sandra, you shared with me the link and the reference to Stephen Kotler's book, The
yeah,
Rise of Superman. And that
yes,
was in relation to the concept of flow. So I
yes.
did listen to a talk,
His Google talk.
his Google talk that he gave with Jamie Wheel, I think.
Yes.
And actually, there was part of it when I was listening to them and I began to think, I think I've seen children in this state. So I was
Yeah.
applying it to my own work. And then in my head, question was forming, but is this maybe the state that many children are in when they're playing, when they're
Maybe it's where they live until we kick them out of it.
yeah, yeah, I thought, and it was interesting as that thought came into my head. Jamie Wheel did mention that it's something that the Montessori style of teaching.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, yeah. I was amazed, and I thought, because Montessori would be very much about
Mhm,
play and experiential and all of that. So I definitely think, like you say, it would be, it's worth maybe noting that this might be something that could be researched further and
mhm, mhm.
taking everything else into consideration. So, yeah, so you mentioned there about Joel Osteen,
Yeah,
and do you know him, or have you met him, or?
I have not. I
Mm,
pass his church often. It used to be the the Houston Rockets basketball stadium, but I've heard him tell his story, and I reference him a lot because I think he's such a great example of using stories and being authentic when you speak.
yeah.
He'll get touched and he'll just sob when he's preaching, and 16,000 people in the stadium go wild because he's being so real. I've heard him tell his story about he was the guy behind the camera. He learned all about television production and making his father look good in front of TV. And then when his father died, um, he realized that he had to step up, and he had been so terrified. I don't know the story of how he overcame it. I don't know if he had a coach or coaches, or if he just trusted God
Mm.
to to get him through it.
But it's another example of how millions of people would have missed out on his influence if,
Millions.
yeah. So you may have answered this, Sandra, already, but I am curious, just in case, what would you think is the greatest tragedy of the fear of public speaking?
Yeah, I think I have said it.
Hmm.
Just to reiterate, the greatest tragedy of the fear of public speaking not being addressed is that a large percentage of the population have some kind of gift or talent or expertise to share, and they it is being held back.
Mhm.
They are being held back.
And Sandra, I always ask everybody I speak to, what was your experience of school yourself? Primary school and secondary school? Were you encouraged to speak up? Were you?
Not really.
No.
No, I was so shy. I was a good student. So, I was an A, B student, but I was, it was all very quiet. Um, and I was a Z. So I was always at the back of the class because students were seated alphabetically. Um,
There was something actually in your book, and I took note of it because it touched me as well. And I think it touched me as a teacher. When I read it, it actually brought a tear. Yeah, here it is. I've taken notes. On page 7, you said, my talent needed nurturing, but no teacher had been able or willing to affirm my abilities or help me make the connection to my own gift. So I quit acting. Just like that, I gave up. Oh, when I read that, I thought, oh my goodness, I wonder have there been many students in my classroom
mhm,
who have had that experience because I haven't been able to tap into
mhm.
their gift, their talent, their uniqueness. I found that really touching.
That to me is the importance and the thrill of teaching, whether you're teaching children or adults. That ability to see who people are and support that is such a foundational principle in my methodology,
Mm,
is to do the best I can to see who people are, see what their unique gifts are, and give voice to that and support them so that they start to feel a sense of confidence in themselves. That is truly what I love to do
Mm. I'm really hopeful that education is moving a
in
little
that
bit more
direction.
in that direction. I think it's a long journey,
Mhm.
but I think we're faced in the right direction anyway. And so, Sandra, what is your favorite quotation?
Well, I printed it out because I knew you were going to ask, and I don't want to misquote. This was Buckminster Fuller, who was a kind of a philosopher. He said, "Everyone has the perfect gift to give the world. And if each of us is freed up to give our unique gift, the world will be in total harmony."
That's beautiful. I think that ties almost everything that we were talking about together, full circle.
Yeah,
That's really beautiful.
yeah.
So, Sandra, can you tell the audience just a little bit more now about the types of courses that you presently offer? And I think this is where, with technology
Yeah,
and our greater awareness of technology over the last year, your courses are available to people across the world now.
I know it's so exciting, and I'm a late pivoter, I have to say, but I am finally making that COVID-19 pivot to offering my Sandra Zimmer method in a virtual as well as an online version. So I do live classes in my center, the Self Expression Center in Houston, Texas, but obviously not very many people can come and do that. So I've started doing a virtual course. It's virtually the same course. It's just done in a small group via Zoom is really the main platform I'm using. And then I also have an online video and workbook version, which I spent about 5 years working on with a partner who helped me translate it down into 21 videos. There's short videos, and then there's workbook exercises so that people can do it on their own. It's certainly easier to do it in a group,
Mm.
but um, but I've done the best I can to create a program so that they can actually do it inexpensively on their own and in whatever arenas they are participating in.
And I imagine if it supports people to get into the flow, that it will be the potential will be huge for individuals.
I hope so.
And Sandra, then your book is available. I know I got it myself on Amazon, Your Time to Shine, and
Mhm.
I'd highly recommend it. I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you so much.
Oh no, you're very welcome. It definitely gives provides a different type of perspective on public speaking, and it's very easy to read. Um, a lot in it to digest.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I,
And Sandra, then how can people get in contact with you or find out more?
mhm. There are two places. One is my current website, which is self-expression.com. Also, that is going to become sandrazimmer.com within the next couple of months. And so that's where you can really find out and get in touch with me. And if you're interested in the online video version, that is actually sandrazimmermethod.com. But it's not hard to Google Sandra Zimmer and find all the resources.
Super, Sandra. And just so, in conclusion, then we're kind of coming to the end. What would you say is the most important message you'd like to share with the listeners now, following our discussion?
Well, I think it's still the idea that if you have stage fright, public speaking fear, public speaking anxiety, that you really have the potential to be brilliant at speaking. And the caveat is that you have to become willing to be authentic. If you want to continue to create a kind of illusion of perfection and have a perfect performance, that will impair your ability to really speak brilliantly and from flow. But if you can allow yourself permission to be who you really are and speak from that, you will set the world on fire with what you have to say.
Fantastic. And Sandra, one final very important question. Have you ever been to Ireland?
No, but I would love to.
Oh, well, hopefully, things are starting to look up a little bit, I think. I'm the eternal optimist with
Is Ireland open for travel?
no, not really. Not really. We are just coming out of lockdown and we still have quite strict restrictions at the moment. So I don't think there's going to be much international travel for the rest of the year.
Mhm,
But hopefully after that, we're still in the vaccination
mhm,
process.
mhm.
But hopefully,
Yeah,
so hopefully we might get to meet in person someday.
I hope so. I would love to come to Ireland and meet you
Yeah,
and teach you the Sandra Zimmer method and see
that
what happens.
that would be amazing. Well, I'll definitely be following you online and putting as much of your method into practice as possible. Sandra, just before we sign off, is there anything else that you'd like to add that you haven't had a chance to mention or
I don't think so, other than to say thank you again for this opportunity. It has been such a pleasure to meet you. I have the sense that you and I have a similar way of thinking about teaching and speaking. And so I hope that we'll continue to stay in touch and
most
maybe become lifelong friends.
Yeah, most definitely. I definitely have that feeling myself when I'm reading your book and listening to your videos. So thank you very much, Sandra. And I'm going to just sign off there. Have a lovely day in Texas.